Welcome everybody from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. My name's Scott, and today we're going to be looking at our urban parking system repository that has been built and designed in Enterprise Architect once again. I'm joined by Stephen Maguire, who is our resident expert in diagramming and modelling and all things making EA look fantastic. So welcome, Stephen. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Scott.
I understand today that we're going to be having a look at some threat modelling. So could you tell us about that?
I would be delighted to, Scott. A topic that's very, very much on the lips of most organisations around the world, both government and private organisations, as the threats from cyber attacks and the like increase almost exponentially. So let's make a start. As always, I'm going to set my perspective, and I can do that by looking at this drop down in the top right-hand corner of the application. I've been doing some systems engineering work using the systems modeling language, and I'm going to change my perspective now to analysis here. And you can see here, we've got a number of different models under analysis, and one of them is threat modeling. So I'm going to choose that option, and you can see the tool changes its focus, and we've got a number of different models here that show us some examples of threat modeling. This is a very big topic, Scott. I want to do things from first principles. So let's get busy with this. I'm going to close this one here, and I'm going to put in a location or a package to contain the models that I'm going to create. We have a number of different analysis models already, custom diagrams, channel reservations, and whiteboards and data flow diagrams. We're going to put one in here called threat modeling. And we're just going to create the package there. And now we'll select the diagram as well. You can see there's a threat modeling diagram, a trust diagram. Yep. So let's get started. And we won't change that title for the moment. We'll do some of the diagramming first. Again, we get a blank canvas for us to start doing our diagramming work. And the toolbox has changed to be elements that we would use in a trust diagram, including some patterns there that we'll use. But again, we'll do things from first principles. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start with a threat. And I'm going to drop that element onto the canvas. And you notice that what pops up here is the options here for the different types of threats. And this is based on a particular framework, if you like. And we'll talk about that in a tick. So one thing that's happened here is that you can see that the elements popped up with a prefix to the name. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off, Scott. That is for our requirements, but the flexibility in the tool is, we can easily do that. I go to the settings ribbon and we choose the reference data panel, and we choose settings there, auto names and counters, and I can look at the requirement element. So if I click down on there, you can see that there are a number of elements there, and you can see that the requirement is the name is being prefixed and a counter being applied. So I'm going to turn that off for the moment when we're doing this and save that. So that's kind of something that you might want to do as you're working, turn that on and off, make it.
If you're building thousands of requirements, it's helpful for you to automatically start numbering them. But in this instance, we're only looking at one or two. So
yeah, so let's do that again now with that off, and we can see how that works with it off. We put a threat on, and we'll call it spoofing, and we give that the name spoofing. And as always, Scott, I encourage people to be putting in descriptions or notes and things, because that's what we want people to do for them to understand it. So I'm going to put in a note about what spoofing is about, and it says, in an urban parking system, spoofing primarily involves impersonating legitimate users, parking sensors, or system components to gain unauthorized access and benefits. So I encourage you not just to put in generic information, like what spoofing is defined in Wikipedia or somewhere, but to put in some information that's relevant to the particular application or project that you're working on. Yeah. So let's make a start, and we're going to put in a number of different threats within this group here. So I find this a useful thing to use that as a grouping element, and we'll put in a number of different threats, and we'll call this one spoofing as, or choose spoofing as the type, and I'll put that one in as a user credentials theft and account impersonation. So I'll change the shape of that slightly, put it up there, and again, I want to put in some notes, and so I'll do that, and we'll back into our application here, select that item, and put in some notes. And again, an attacker's attempt to steal user credentials through phishing and key logging or database breaches once in access to parking accounts. So again, all relevant to the parking meter system, or exploit the parking system for fraudulent purposes. So let's go on and put a few more of these in here. So, the next one we're going to put in is, I'm going to put another threat in here, and we'll call that spoofing again, and we'll quickly put that one in, and we'll put some notes in. I'm just moving my cursor around to my other monitor, and let's go back into here, select this one here, and put some notes in there. So you can see, Scott, that that's all kind of still starting to build up a story. Remember all of the things that we've learned in other videos. We can easily use the layout ribbon to create alignment and element sizes. So I'll make these the same size, and I'll align them left, and we start to tell a story here. So that's one group of elements that I'm going to put in, but I can also put in another group. So let's do that, and we'll just get over to this monitor, and let's put in another group here. We'll call it, it's going to be another threat group, and so we'll put that there, and we'll call it tampering. So notice the tool automatically allows you to select these pre-configured
So
things.
do those options come with the technology, which is threat modeling?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Scott. They do. They come with the technology, and it's part of a framework called STRIDE. So if you look at the acronyms of those, you can see that that it's STRIDE. So when we do this, I can set this over in the properties window as well, and you can see that
spoofing, tampering,
yeah. So they spell out the acronym STRIDE. So that's what's going on there. This one here, I'm going to call this tampering. So I'm going to have a different group for each one. We'll call that tampering, and I put some notes in, I think, about that. So tampering in parking systems involves unauthorized modifications of parking data, payment records, or system configurations. This includes, altering timestamps and things as well. Now I just want to use some layout magic again, and I'm just going to select this element as well, make these guys the same size because I'm going to be putting things into that as well, and align them left. The other thing that I want to talk about, Scott, is this is detailing the kind of things that can happen, the threats here that we've got, but we need to put in some mitigations as well. So what we're going to do is use the toolbox to our advantage, and we've got the mitigation checklist there, and I'll drop that in and put that on the right-hand side of our spoofing one. So this one here is, we're going to call spoofing identity. So again, we get a list of pre-configured things, and let's put that in and see what happens. So what's happened, I don't know why that's
a lot of the work's already done for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Created.
Yeah. So what it's done is it's also set the diagram to have tags in it, so you can see, this mitigation, not started, the threat priority, and the type spoofing. I can remove that if I want to. I prefer not to show that in the diagram, but that's up to a particular user's choice. And Enterprise Architect has the flexibility of being able to set these things. And you can see over here in the compartments panel of the properties window, tags had been automatically set as we drop that element in. But let's put it back like that, and let's go back to our original style. So it's doing some work for you, but it's my preference to be doing these things a little bit differently, and keeping that information off the diagram for the moment. Otherwise, the diagram gets quite large. So we've got spoofing identity there. Let's use a relationship here, mitigates, and we're saying that those things will mitigate the spoofing threats. So we've got that there, and this is a generic list and quite useful for people starting, but I want to create my own list of mitigations. And so I can look at the checklist there and, very useful things: appropriate authentication, protect secret data, don't store things. But let's just remove these because, as you know, Scott, I'm someone that likes to be showing people things from first principles. Once you know how to do it from first principles, it's a little bit like maths at school. You can start and say, look, I know how to do things from first principles now. I can start, cutting some corners or doing some of those things. So the first thing I want to put in here is something which, will be very useful. And you notice now that if I click on this element, those things have all gone. And I'm going to put this in here, and multi-factor authentication for user accounts. So a useful thing to do. And let's put in some more of these. And we'll look at device certificates for Internet of Things devices. So let's do that and put those in, and we can put in digital signatures for parking tickets with time-based validation. So let's put that one in as well. And you can see that we haven't got these threats all lined up yet, but we will have a look at what we can do with respect to that. So, multi-factor authentication for user accounts, fake parking sensors sending invalid occupancy data. So, how can we deal with those things? So that's the basis of what we're doing, Scott. But we need to, fill this diagram out. The other thing I want to show you before we move on is to move these things over. So when you're drawing diagrams, you're not sure exactly the direction that they're going to go, but you have the opportunity of quickly moving things. What I want to show you is the ability to put in elements related to trust boundaries. So these are things like, we've got an external zone, or we've got a DMZ zone, or an internal network zone, and the threats that are possible in particular zones are different, and the threats between zones are different. So let's put in a trust boundary. We can just simply put that one in there again, and let's put in this one and give it a name of external zone. And let's put in a little note here that makes it very obvious that this is an untrusted zone.
Yeah.
So we've got that there, and then we can put in, an external system into that. Let's put in a browser, and we can give this name a user browser as well. So,
and someone looking at this diagram can automatically tell that the external browser is not trusted. So
exactly. And then we'll look at how we, link these things up. So, we can now put a relationship, a thread trace between, the threat and the browser. So, look, that's the basis of this diagram, Scott, and I'll complete the diagram, and I'll get you to perform some of your time traveling and do your magic, and we'll look at the finished diagram.
Thanks, Stephen. I can see that you've updated the model accordingly. So we've got a few different trusted and semi-trusted and untrusted zones. We've got spoofing and tampering and some checklists. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about this diagram and how it models threats.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. This topic of cybersecurity and threat modeling is obviously a very large and very pertinent and topical discussion. The modeling we've done is just the beginning of looking at how we can model threats in Enterprise Architect, and what we've done is just a basic outline of the kind of things that you can look at and record inside Enterprise Architect. So we have our threats, and we've talked about spoofing threats, and we've grouped those together. We've talked about tampering threats, repudiation threats, and remember we've got this information here in the notes describing what it is. So in the parking context, repudiation involves users or operators denying their actions within the system. Common scenarios include users denying the duration of their parking parking stay, dispute charges, claiming they never received them, all those kind of things. And we've got these checklists, which is the mitigations for each one. So you can see that there's mitigations for repudiation, there's mitigations for tampering with data, and spoofing identity. So we model the threats, we model the mitigations, and we create connectors there. And what I haven't done in a lot of detail, Scott, but it is possibly the topic of a future video. This is an introduction to this topic, but we've got our zones here, our trust boundaries, if you like. And, we've got in this one here, the external zone, we've got an example of the user devices of the browser, and we've got some relationships between the actual threats and the elements in those boundaries. So in the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, we've got load balancers, API gateways. We've got all sorts of other things that might be inside that, firewalls and things that might be in that DMZ. And then, of course, we've got various other zones like our trusted corporate zone, and the threats will be different between them. There are also threats between the different zones as well that you could model. The thing I want to say about this model, and what we'll take up perhaps in a future video, is that we would want really to be able to, if we want to go into more detail, is to look at the relationship between each one of these mitigations and the threats themselves, and then to be able to take those further down into a model and be able to explore how an organisation is actually dealing with that threat and how they're implementing a mitigation strategy. But this is a great start, Scott, to get people started with looking at cybersecurity properly and modelling it inside their own repositories.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Stephen. It's great to see all the elements come together in a diagram, and provides a great starting point for threat modeling in Enterprise Architect. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today as they have a look at threat modeling in Enterprise Architect. As always, we encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our YouTube videos. We love your feedback. We love hearing future topics and ideas. And there's details and credentials to get hold of Stephen listed in the video below. As always, thanks, Stephen, for your expertise and for your experience with modelling. It's been great to see threat modelling in Enterprise Architect, so thank you.
Always a pleasure, Scott. Thank you.